Are you unsure about where to look at when having a conversation with others? I'm Xavier, and today I'll be discussing the role of eye contact in interpersonal communication. Although it is difficult for most, me included, eye contact is important for invoking meaningful and sincere conversation with another person. I will be discussing this with the use of a research article. I will explain how my communicative behaviors before learning about facial cues, and I will elaborate on how I changed my behaviors to communicate now and in the future. Jumping right in chapter 2, one of the topics was nonverbal cues and nonverbal expression, and that included facial cues, which is how the face behaves during interpersonal communication. Yes, and so of course that includes the eyes, and an article from the Philosophical Transactions of the Royal Society dives further into this, explaining that humans have both a conscious and subconscious reaction to facial expressions, one they can control and one they cannot. And so a human subconscious reaction to human gaze or eye contact prepares the multiple parts of their brain to mentalize any proceeding information. What this means is your eye contact with another person will prepare them to receive any information you choose to give to them after. Now, now jumping into the next point on how I behaved before this class. I was a shy, timid kid growing up. I didn't like looking at people, and I would look in the dirt. And this limited my social interactions, and this included interactions with my father. And so, growing up, I had trouble making eye contact with him when having meaningful conversations for the most part. Like, I would turn my chair even to look away from him. And this did two things. One, of course, irritate him and dilute the conversation that followed. But also, two, he wouldn't take whatever I was saying seriously because of the lack of eye contact. And yeah, one example of this was in high school, I wanted to change the rules on how long I could play video games. And being the shy kid as I was, I avoided the conversation directly. I wrote an email and made a presentation about it. And when I ambushed him with the presentation before dinner, he just immediately dismissed it, just like, "You're not ready." Like, who could blame him? And so, like, now jumping into how I communicate now, I make it a point to make a lot of eye contact with people, and this is largely due to being in a work environment where I have to do customer service. Like, at Levi's, I have to sell the jeans, and part of making that transaction is making eye contact to start the sale. And yeah, you get my point. So, a more current example of how this behavior has changed is during spring break, I went to a concert with my dad, and we unfortunately got into a fight. And we gave it some time afterwards, and then we eventually sat down and had a conversation about it. Normally, I would have avoided eye contact. I would have huddled, put my head in my knees or whatever, but this time I looked him straight in the eye, talked to him about what I wanted and needed, and I actually conveyed fully what I wanted to say for the first time in a long time with him, and he was able to communicate effectively back to me what he wanted from me and what he needed to see from me. And so it's a very specific example, but just by having this consistent eye contact with other people, I'm I'm more accustomed to sincere conversations. And so just to wrap this all up, I will initiate meaningful and sincere conversation with others. I discussed this with a research article, talked about an example from my past, and talked about an example from the present. And just to conclude this, Warren Buffett has a saying with investing that danger always lurks, and that not to shy away from an investment because of it. And so, in moments of shyness, hear the voice of the Oracle of Omaha, and I down that fear.